The following presentation is brought to you by Leadership Jacksonville.
Hello, I'm Kent Lindsay. Welcome to this edition of the Jacksonville Legacy Series, presented by Leadership Jacksonville. Colt Fever, the Jacksonville Jazz Festival, the Jacksonville River Walk. One cannot think of these events or landmarks without thinking also of Jake Godbold, Mayor of Jacksonville from 1978 to 1987 and former City Council member who is known for his street savvy and tell it like it is demeanor. Godbold marched boldly into his role as mayor, forming public and private partnerships, restoring crumbling buildings, and working tirelessly to build up Jacksonville's self-esteem in his own unique way. Join us now as we learn more about the life, the leadership, and the legacy of former Jacksonville Mayor Jake Godbold.
Oh my God.
He said, now we've got a burned up Cadillac out here. You know?
Oh my God. You've been an amazing leader for Jacksonville for many, many years. What is your leadership style?
You know, to be honest with you, I haven't thought about it. It just, it's not any particular style. I think it's just me. I had an opportunity to work with a great company, Independent Life, when I got out of the United States Army in the Korean War. And Mr. Bryant was the kind of president of a large company in downtown Jacksonville that wanted all his young guys, he was involved and he wanted all his young people involved. And he felt like that joining the JCs and he paid everybody's dues. And he came to me and he said, you're gonna be one of my guys and I want you to join the JCs. And I wanted to just go to work. I wanted to have a family and I wanted to stay busy and make some commission. But he wanted me to be involved in the community. So I joined the JCs. And that's what the JCs was about. It was about leadership, development of young men. And I think that I developed the type of leadership in the JCs that helped me later on to go into politics. I had no idea that I'd ever go into politics, and that was the idea of getting to the JCs. I think it was being community involved in the community and being part of the young leadership coming up.
Who were your mentors?
Who was my mentor?
Mm-hmm.
Probably Jacob Bryant, because my father had died early. Mr. Bryant put me to work. And he pushed me into being part of the leadership of Jacksonville.
What do you think he saw in you that he knew that you would be a great leader for the city?
I don't think he saw anything on me. I think he did all his young men like that. But after I was president of the JCs, he saw something in me because he wanted me to run for the new council. Mr. Bryant called me up and asked me to come over to see him. So I come back, he called me Jacob. He said, Jacob, I understand you're not going to run for the council on consolidation. And I said, Mr. Bryant, I don't think I can. I said, I got a wife and kid coming on, and I just spent my vacation and money, and I don't think my manager, Mr. Motley, wants me to run. And because he's got a responsibility. I've got a responsibility of 6 agents that look to me. And he picked the phone up while I was sitting there, and he called. Said, Motley. He said, I understand you don't want Jake. I said, oh, God. He said, I understand you don't want Jake to run. And he said, well, I don't know if he has the time to handle these 6 agents and do this. He said, well, move him around somewhere. Let him be a roving superintendent. He said, but I want him to be part of the leadership. They need him down there with his leadership. I want him to run. That was all there was to it. So I ran. And that's the only reason I became mayor, is because I happened to be council president when Hans went to run for governor. I didn't want to be mayor. I just ended up being mayor because I was president. But then I started a couple of little projects in that 6 months, and I wanted to complete them. I really didn't want to run for a second term. But you know, that's the best way to be the best mayor in town, is don't give a damn about being reelected. Just do what's best and let the people decide. But you start going up there and you're making you're making decisions because of politics, you don't make the right decisions. You make what's best for you as a politician, but you don't make the best decisions for the future of Jacksonville. I was lucky because you asked the question of people I admire. The most people I admire was the people that were involved during that time, during 78 and 79, because we had come to a point where after my election, the government was real split. We had a guy that ran against me, Senator Brantley, who was a great guy and a great leader, but I won. And in the chamber and the leadership business community, majority of them by far voted for him. He had been the Senate president. They had worked real close with him. I had been on the council. They felt like he could make a better mayor. And afterwards, Preston Haskell of the Haskell Company and some others came over to visit with me after the election. And they came to my office and said to me, you know, you could sit here as mayor now. You've been elected. You can chart your course. And which course are you going to take? A lot of people are afraid that you're going to be vindictive. And you have every reason to be, they said. You could be vindictive towards the chamber because a lot of them voted for your opponent. But that won't accomplish anything. And that was their very words. This is not my words, this is their words. And the city won't gain. We'll continue to go backwards. Or you can build a partnership and forget about being vindictive. But it made me feel very humble, and it made me feel very secure in my leadership role as a young councilman coming up here to be mayor, you know? Because the main thing we needed now was development. We had been 12 years in the city, and there wasn't even a crane in Jacksonville. I remember Martha Barrett, my press secretary, coming in and saying the Orlando Sentinel wanted to write an article about my election and about downtown development and everything. They'd like to take a picture of me in front of a crane. I called my aides in and they said, we don't have a crane. There's no cranes in Jacksonville. That meant there wasn't any building going on. There wasn't any growth. Downtown was going backwards. I'm saying to you that when I went to make committees on downtown development, on the Port Authority, on the JEA Authority, the Transportation Authority, I wanted the number one guys. I wanted the Wilford Lyons, president of Independent Life. I wanted Ash Verlander, president of the largest insurance company in town. I wanted Prime Osborne, president of the railroad, to be on those boards. And they did. They made me a promise that if I'd be the leader and I would lead, they'd follow, they'd be out on the limb. So when it came time to put people on boards, I didn't get the second string. I asked for the first string, and they came out and served. And we went out on these leadership trips, and we visited these cities, which I thought was a good idea. I could look at a city and look at what they were doing, and I could see their mistakes. And I didn't want to make those mistakes. But I saw what they were doing that worked, and I fed it into what we thought would work.
What were some of those projects that you brought back from those trips?
Well, two of the most important things that helped me, that defined my administration for those 8.5 years, was one when Preston and Albert Ernest came in and laid that foundation down that I was talking about and challenged me to not be vindictive and challenged me to make a partnership with the chamber and pledge the chamber's support. That, and then that first leadership trip that we went on, and that was to Baltimore. That's where we found the marketplace. That's where we found the landing. Was the first one I saw and visited was Rouse had done in Baltimore. It had literally brought Baltimore back. We also, another one I'll mention is we went to San Antonio, and Severus, the mayor there, I said to him, I love your Riverwalk. God, you got this lake, these ditches. They were ditches. They took sewer water, and put them. The water was sewer water, but they treated it. But they made Mexican little food stores around the way, and hotels and motels all along the walk, and there was these boats going up around it and downtown and around town. And there were thousands of people every night down there eating and dancing and everything right on the Riverwalk. And I said to the mayor, Mayor, I love your Riverwalk. He said, Mayor, I love your river. I'll give you my Riverwalk if you'll give me your river. And on the way back on the plane, I told Don, I said, you know what Cineris was saying? He was saying, if I had a river like St. John's River, I'd build you a damn Riverwalk. And that's what we're going to do. And that's the way we came about building the Riverwalk. I want to say this, that I want the public to understand that what I wanted to do was to set aside, while I was mayor, a certain amount of riverfront that would belong to the people. And it wouldn't be like Miami that to enjoy the ocean, you had to run a hotel or a motel or an office building. That I didn't want office buildings being up against the St. John's River or hotels and nothing else. So we built the landing, and that belongs to the public. And they could always go down to the landing, enjoy the river, party, bring their boats in. We built Metropolitan Park, where we could have concerts and the symphony orchestra and plays and things, and people could go have picnics on the water. We set acres aside on the Riverwalk on the south bank. Mayor Austin later built the south side Riverwalk. So we got the Riverwalk on the south side, the Riverwalk on the north side, and we got the landing, and we got Metropolitan Park. Acres of land set aside that the public, their children and grandchildren, will always be able to go to the river and enjoy the St. John's River. And most people hadn't do that, but I wanted to set aside, before I left office, so many acres of land that wouldn't be taken up by government buildings or hotels or motels.
Right.
You also had a vision of a football team.
Yeah, I forgot about that. How do you forget that?
Yeah.
You know, Karen, talking about football team, John Delaney one time asked me, Mayor Delaney, or President Delaney, whichever one you want to use. But Delaney said to me, he said, Jake, did you ever really believe you'd get a football team here? And I said, John, I really did. Believe it or not, I always thought we'd get a football team. I didn't think we'd probably get it during the time I was mayor. But what I was doing would make it possible for some mayor to get a football team in the future. But I always saw, Karen, the football team is an economic development project. I always saw having an NFL team would be two things. It would bring new industry and new jobs. But I always saw it as a pride thing. Because, you know, back in the 60s, and we wasn't too up on ourselves. You know, our pride wasn't very high. The chamber had done a poll and invited me over to take a look at it. And the pollster said that he had never taken a poll in such a negative city. that we were real negative about ourselves, you know. And they were negative about our elected officials and our downtown development. You know, and so I felt like that before we could move into economic development and downtown development, new jobs, new schools, and increase our quality of life, we had to do something about our image of ourself, that you can't do very much about yourself if you hate yourself. And so I thought football would be something that we could all come together on. I knew Jacksonville loved football.
Where were you when you heard that we got an NFL team?
At Channel 4. Mm-hmm. I was, they invited us down to a waiting room to hear the announcement that night. They moved me into a private room then because they wanted to talk to me about it. And I was sitting there by myself when the word came through. And they had the film on and I didn't know it. And when it came through and announced Jacksonville, I thought I was sitting there by myself. I said, oh, we got it, we got it. And I said a bad word, you know, and they had it on the air. But I was just so happy and so thrilled. It was, you got to realize that was 8 years of work I had put into it, and then another 2 or 3 years before we finally got it, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a big night for all of us, I guess.
Wow, that's terrific.
Well, another big night is you filled the Gator Bowl without a football team.
You have to mention that. You know, I really wasn't in favor of that. That was a Mike Talbot idea, the little genius. He came in and said to me, he said, you know, you've taken Irsay here and you've wined and dined him. He was in town and we had a reception for him. The chamber had taken him out on a boat in the St. Johns River. We had had a great time for him. And he said, but one thing you haven't done is the most important. And I said, Mike, what's that? And he said, you haven't asked the little guy. He's the guy that's going to buy the tickets. You haven't invited him to anything. I said, you know, Mike, you're right. How do we do that? He said, heck, just invite him out to the Gator Bowl. Just say, Irsay is going to be there and we're going to bring him down in a helicopter and you come out and say, we want the Colts. I said, my God, that won't get anybody out there. He said, well, I'll round up and get somebody to donate some Cokes and hot dogs and cold drinks. I said, he said, okay, what do you want, Mary? He said, I'll get some parachute guys to parachute down and entertain them. So I went to the chamber and talked to them about it. They said, he's crazy.
If we can get 65,000 people in those seats up there and let them tell Mr. Irsay that they want the Colts here in Jacksonville, they want the Jacksonville Colts, I think it's going to have a great impression on.
He said, you don't have but 2 days to get a crowd out there. Now we've done everything we can do, and now you go and have this, and it won't be but 1,000 or 2,000 people show up. You're going to be embarrassed. So I came back and I told Mike, he said, so what? He said, wouldn't it be better to find out right now that Jacksonville is really not interested in a football team? I said, damn, Mike, you damn genius. You're absolutely right. We need to find out right now. Now's the time to find out what they think. So we got on the radio and started talking. We didn't have but 2 days. Said, if you really want a football team, if you really want to come out and tell Irsay we want the Colts to be moved here. So I was really nervous. I thought we were going to be embarrassed. The sheriff said nobody was going to be out there, and the sheriff didn't give us but about 20 people out there to police the thing. And here we have Karen end up with 50-something thousand people there. And another 25,000 people outside that couldn't get there, was up on top of their cars listening to it on the radio. In my wildest imagination, I never thought that.
Do you have any regrets?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not many. I don't have any regrets about my personal life. Don't have any regrets about my family, the way I built my family, the woman I married, the baby I adopted, the business I went into. Believe it or not, and I don't say this because I don't wear my religion on my shoulder, I've never made a major decision in my life that I haven't prayed about it. And I mean a long time. When I adopted my baby, I prayed for months about it. When I started to leave independent, I prayed months about it. When I went to marry my wife, and only wife, I prayed about it. So, and my prayers have always been, you got to believe when your prayers are always answered, and my prayers was always answered right. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't stopped praying to this day. But it helped plan my life and everything. But I think you got to be careful about your friends and choosing your friends. Sometimes your friends can hurt you more than your enemies. So I think it's important to have the people you depend on for advice, that you understand who's giving you good advice and who's giving you some personal advice that helps them, you know. And I went through a very hard time with when I was in government with some investigations and things that turned out good. Many people couldn't have went through it the way I went through it and come out as good as I came out and as good as my staff came out, but still it was embarrassing. And I wear my pride very high, and it's very important to me as my reputation. Never embarrass the family. And that was an embarrassing point, and that was a regret. But I came out of it okay, and I came out of it holding my head high. And I'm very, very proud of my people and the people that I had surrounded me. And it's all right. God has been good.
Yeah, you brought up your wife, Jean. You were married for 56 years?
57.
57? How do you do that?
How do you do that? I don't know. I think love has a lot to do with it, and respect, you know. I guess there's different kinds of love, but I picked the right person. I know everybody says their wife is the most wonderful person. Well, I say that too, and they're probably telling the truth, and I'm telling the truth. Jean was just a very special person. She got along with everybody, even my enemies.
Really?
She never said anything bad about anybody. Even if it was one of my opponents or anybody else, she always thought they were great people and everything. But that was the kind of personality she had. She very good to me and very good to her family. And I just never met anybody like her that could get along with everybody. And I miss her so much.
Jake, there's this idea about trusteeship, where trusteeship is the idea that people take ownership of their community. Now, you've taken ownership of this community. Why have you taken ownership of this community, and what does that mean to you?
The only way I can answer that question that I can think of is love. That I really fell in love with Jacksonville. It's kind of like you have a love for a baby, you know, and that baby's born and you think, oh, I can't love this baby anymore. And then as it gets older, you love it more and more. And you say, where does this end? And Jacksonville's kind of like that. I was born here and I was raised here. And I ran these streets all my life in Brentwood and that area over there all my life. And then the city was just so good to me, and you know, not to make it so sad, but it's an old American story. How does a guy from a project, a housing project, how does he go from a housing project and being as poor as I was, to being mayor of the city of Jacksonville? And that's a great opportunity for anybody, much less somebody like me. And a lot of people had to take an interest in me as a boy, because my father died very young, and he was 47. And I was just getting out of the service. I was just starting to go to work, unmarried at that time. So a lot of people had to take an interest in me and where I was going and what I was doing. And therefore, I was very thankful, appreciative. I think it's important in your life to, you know, you find people and see people today, and I guess younger people have more than I did, and more than a lot of other people like me did. And they don't really appreciate it as much. Come a little harder for me. And so I think it's very important in life to be very thankful and appreciative. Just thank you, you know, thank you. I can never say thank you enough to so many people that made all that possible. Because if you look at, if you just go by judging people by their resume, and you looked at my resume as a young boy, it wouldn't have been too impressive. Just a lot of people, a lot of help, and a lot of love, and the city made that possible. So I always felt like I wanted to make it a better place, and I'm sincere when I say that. I just felt like I owed it to, and I enjoyed doing it. I didn't do it as an obligation. I had fun all the way, you know. You know, when you leave this world, you want to make it better. When I leave Jacksonville, I wanted to say, hey, he made it a better place. He added a lot to quality of life.
Former Mayor Jake Godbold has left an indelible mark on the city of Jacksonville with his no-nonsense style and can-do attitude. He has made Jacksonville a better place through his leadership and vision.